Okay. Okay, we are live. Welcome to the Sofa Cast. And with me, as always, is
Okay, we are live. Welcome to the Sofa Cast. And with me, as always, is we are live.
that's weird. I'm getting an echo.
Yeah, that's not on my end either. I hear it distinctly coming from your computer. Oh,
Echo.
yeah, that's not that.
Okay, I've muted my YouTube. That's what was happening. Okay, that should be better. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, so we are live. Welcome to the Sofa Cast, and with me, as always, is Luciano.
Hi friends, how's everyone doing today? So in today's SofaCast, we're gonna have a pal of ours come on whenever he's ready. We're just waiting for him to finish setting up stuff on his end so that way he can join us fully prepared. But we are going to be talking today, at least on my end, we're going to be talking about the end result of the elections in the United States. And it was a very interesting period. It was a very interesting thing to watch because all across the country, there were a shocking number of diverse individuals, not just people who were different genders and different races than have historically been in Congress, but also people of different religious traditions. We have some of the first ever Muslim national. We have some of the first ever Muslim elected officials in this country's history, with two women in particular being in the House of Representatives, which is a monumental deal because both women are Muslim women, both women are from the Middle East and from Africa, and it's honestly incredible to see them start to rise to power and start to see an actual diversity in this country's House of Representatives. And the House of Representatives has always been a very volatile area. People of a wide range of different religious and political beliefs have been there before. So it's not super surprising, but it's definitely interesting to see. And it's going to be very fascinating to watch over the course of the next couple of weeks as these people are inaugurated and as they start to enact various different agendas. Most of the diverse people in the House of Representatives are Democrats. A good number of them are progressives, but some of them are not progressives. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't have progressive ideas and progressive views, but it does mean that they hesitate to use that label to describe themselves. Although all over the country, there's definitely been a sensation that it's being more and more popular for someone to be a progressive, which is an interesting thing to see since I myself am a progressive. I hold very progressive political views, but I also understand that being a progressive isn't the easiest thing to do and also win races. So I'm very excited to see at least a handful of genuinely progressive individuals having power and to see what they do and to see if maybe because of them it'll be possible for more people to rise to power who are progressives and have the ability to enact actual change in Congress.
Yeah, potentially exciting times ahead for the United States.
I'm very excited to see some of the stuff that's going to happen next, but also it's very interesting to watch some specific races and some specific like candidacies because there are some races that are still being disputed. Right now in North Carolina's 9th congressional district, Mark Harris is being accused, not necessarily Mark Harris himself, but his campaign is being accused of absentee ballot fraud, which is a very specific allegation that effectively means that people who were trying to send in absentee ballots had those ballots intercepted by people who were saying that they were election volunteers and they would go and complete the ballots for the people who were trying to fill them out and trying to send them. And it's unknown the exact number as of right now, just how many of these ballots were sent out and just how much of an impact this had on this race. But Mark Harris was believed to have been the original winner in that specific race. And that's the race I paid a lot of attention to because I live in Greensboro, North Carolina, which isn't far from that area. And I have friends who were involved, not on Mark Harris's side, but on his opponent's side. And his opponent originally conceded, but his opponent, as early as I think yesterday, took back the concession and said that if he had known what was going to happen, or if he had any idea just how fraudulent this election appears to have been, he probably would have changed his mind. I'm going to be posting some sources in the comments, so that way people who want to like read this themselves can. Oh no, the first one I'm going to use is too long.
Does this work now?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi,
Oh, good.
Basil. Seems to be working.
So apparently I didn't enable my microphone before joining.
Ah,
I'm glad we can hear you.
I was sitting there going, hello. Oh.
But yeah, though that was one of the races that I paid a lot of attention to. Another state that people should probably be paying attention to is Wisconsin, where there are measures that are in the process of being passed that would strip the governor of power, and that's after what I believe was a Republican governor's seat went to a Democrat in the wake of the election. And this is something that's happened in North Carolina as well, when Patrick McCrory, who was the governor of North Carolina in 2016 and lost, when he realized that he was defeated, one of the first things he did was he worked with Republicans in the state to pass a bill that would effectively hemorrhage the powers of the governor. And that doesn't sound like a big deal, because to a lot of people, governor's power is like really simple. It's just passing or vetoing bills. And that's something that is not true. Governors have a lot of power. They have a cabinet, just like the president does. They oversee a good number of different commissions and different government agencies in the state. They are responsible for things like Medicaid implementation and Medicaid expansion. So to see them being hemorrhaged of their powers just because a Republican is going out and wants to make sure that the Democrat can't do as many things as the Democrat would like is really messed up, to say the least. It's something that's extremely frustrating, and it's something that's also really difficult to challenge unless the people who are in the state legislatures actually decide to do something. And oftentimes that is the Republicans who are on the side of the governors that are leaving.
yeah. A
Interesting.
lot going. So go on. A lot happening then.
There's always. Oh, sorry.
I saw someone tweeting about how interesting it was to see Mike Pence sign in some of these people. Some of these Muslim women, for example. He seemed to be quite awkward.
He's a bit of a Christian boy, isn't he?
Yeah.
I hear he's a little bit keen on that.
Yes, just a
little bit, just a tiny bit. He's only like a cultural Christian. He's not like a real believer. It's definitely very interesting to see individuals react to the fact that there are now Muslim women who are going to have the power to help enact legislation that affects everyone in the country. And some of those reactions, a lot of the reactions I've seen as a progressive and as a Democrat have been positive. People are excited that people with different religious beliefs are having the opportunity to show that just because you believe in a different thing than someone else doesn't mean that like you'd make a bad politician solely on the basis of your religious faith. But there have also been a lot of reactions that have been less good. The other day, a state senator in Arkansas by the name of Jason Rapert went off on this rant where he pretended that Christians have always been on the side of like LGBT people and that Muslims are like the real bad guys. And the thing that he was saying, like, I understand why it was that he was saying it, but he was acting like Christians have always wanted, the gays to have rights, when we all know that that's not true.
I might dispute you on that slightly.
He also talked about like the American Atheists and the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and that's because he is not a great person, and he says and does a lot of things that make his constituents mad, because his constituents and also other people in the state of Arkansas don't always like that he says and does really crazy hyper-religious things. And because of that, people challenge him, and sometimes he blocks those people, which is something that in the United States, at least.
Is he the guy with the can't block people on Twitter argument going on? He's
that guy. Like
that guy.
in the United States, if you're an elected official, you aren't supposed to be able to block people, especially people who are your constituents online, unless you like take screenshots of them acting like super racist or hyper aggressive towards you. But if someone is just like, hey, I'm an LGBT person, can you not do that? Like that's not a thing that you can reasonably block someone over if you are an elected official.
There is a similar story in the UK, actually, which I now can't remember who it was or the exact details of. I will try and look it up later on. Where an MP who I think was the minister of a specific department had done something unpopular, and someone was tweeting at them asking for help with how to deal with it, and they just blocked them.
Really?
And that became something of a controversy, and I'm not quite sure who it was at the moment, because I tweeted at this person saying, "What you doing?" along with a large group of other people. I will go back through my thing and see if I can figure out who it was.
Okay. Any other news for us, Luciano, from across the pond?
So those are the big ones without getting into the Donald Trump and Michael Cohen things, which are always fun. But for right now, I'm going to not talk about that because there's a lot of stuff that's breaking news that's happening right now. So I don't want to be like, hey, here's a thing, and then it not be correct. I'm going to wait until that story just cools down a little bit and everyone knows what's actually being said before I chime in.
Oh, I see. Do you want to talk a bit about Jim Acosta?
Oh, that's right. That did happen in the last month. I actually forgot about that. Jim, I forgot that happened in the last month.
Which one's that? Sorry?
Like Jim Acosta is the CNN anchor who got kicked out of the White House press room because so the reasoning that was used by the conservatives, it's not true, this isn't what actually happened, was that when he was questioning Donald Trump and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, there was a White House press intern that he physically assaulted in order to keep his microphone. That's not actually what happened. What happened was a White House intern went over to him and tried to take his microphone away, and he didn't touch her and asked her to stop, that she needs to leave him alone while he asks his question. But there was a video that was edited. I've seen people saying that it was edited by someone from InfoWars, which is Alex Jones's, I guess, press organization. Yeah. I've seen people saying that that was the source of the edited video, but I don't know for sure if that's actually where it came from. And Sarah Huckabee Sanders, among other things, retweeted a video that pretends to show Jim Acosta assaulting the press intern when it just shows him slightly turning away from her, slightly sped up, so it looks like he hits her with his elbow or something. And it was a ridiculous story, but it also goes to show the lengths to which the current administration in charge of the White House and in charge of the government to a lesser extent is willing to go to avoid accountability. And it's an extremely frustrating thing to see, especially as someone who works as a journalist and as someone who writes for a living.
Yeah.
I did see an edited version of that video where someone had CG'd it so he just spins around and punches her in the face.
That is not the video I saw.
I saw the original one, and then I saw this other one. You can see that it's obviously edited because his arm bends at very unnatural angles, just goes whop.
Yeah.
Terrible. If you can find that, you should send that to me, because honestly, I'd be interested in seeing how they did it. I do video editing, and I don't know. I'm not good enough that I think I'd be able to do something like that.
No, I don't think I'd be able to do it in any way convincingly.
Does this set a bad precedent for freedom of the press in the United States? What do you think?
Yeah,
I would argue that it does, because it shows that there are at least some people who, if they got power, would be willing to suppress the freedom of the press provided it's politically expedient for them.
I was going to say I thought we'd established that he was a bad president, and then I realized you said precedent.
My American accent.
But yeah, I think it's freedom of the press is very important, no matter which side, in quotes side, because I'm not really into the whole left-right divide thing as such. But I think freedom of the press and freedom of speech is very important in any political climate to be able to hold the government accountable.
I agree.
Yeah. And I think it was just today, or was it yesterday, Donald Trump tweeted, all in caps, what was it? Oh, yeah, fake news is the enemy of the people.
I mean, that's been a thing he said over and over again. I don't follow him on Twitter. I can check right now, and I'm actually about to. But that sounds like something that he would be saying pretty consistently.
I don't follow him on Twitter, but people I do follow on Twitter keep replying to him.
That's the same thing that happens with me. So, actually, yeah, it was yesterday. It was yesterday that he tweeted fake news, the enemy of the people. Also, like, it's not part of a thread or anything. It's just like one tweet that's like almost comically short.
Spooky Bedhair has just put in the chat for me the thing I was talking about. It was the immigration minister blocking people who were trying to ask for help with immigration on Twitter.
That's right, yeah. And
thank you, Mr. Bedhair.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah. And yeah, I just wanted to say, I thought, all this stuff, about fake news that Donald Trump keeps going on about, it just reminds me of the kind of rhetoric that Hitler and Stalin were fond of.
It's similar. And like one of the things that's frustrating is like a lot of the things that Donald Trump says, if you ignore the context in which he's saying them, they aren't like, most of them aren't horrible ideas. Like things like make America great again and fake news being bad. Sure. The issue is like you can't have the people in power being the people who decide what it is that would make America great again. And you can't have them being the people who decide what is and isn't fake news. And the problem is that when Donald Trump talks about these things, he wants to be the arbiter. He wants to be the person who decides what it is that qualifies as fake news. And he's not an honest person. He can't take criticism. So anything that's critical of him is fake news, even and especially when it's a factual criticism.
I'm gonna poke my snoz in and say something that may make me very unpopular.
Go for it.
I don't think Donald Trump is as bad as Hitler.
I don't disagree with you. I just hope that he doesn't try to prove you wrong.
Yeah,
that's my concern.
What I mean there is, I don't think he's a good president. I don't think he should be in that position. I don't think he should be in politics at all. But I find myself in a position of having to defend him because there is fake news about in the form of people saying things about him in order to disparage him that just aren't true or are misinterpreted or are blown out of proportion. So I find myself as someone, even though I tend to avoid the left, right, whatever political divides, I try as much as I can to avoid that dichotomy. I tend to lean more on the left side of it. Now, even as someone who does tend to lean more on the left side of it, I find myself having to defend Donald Trump against misinformation, which does not sit well with me because I don't like him.
I know what you mean. Yeah, I don't think he's as bad as Hitler or Stalin, but still, I think his rhetoric is very divisive, and
Oh, I'm not disputing that. The thing is, he, like most politicians, he doesn't really say anything. He it just, the way he frames the things he doesn't say is more divisive than most politicians who say things in a way that is intended to make them seem appealable, make them appeal to every demographic.
yeah.
Whereas I think Trump knows that he doesn't appeal to every demographic, or his press people do. So the things that he says are non-statements that are designed to appeal to people who think he is making certain statements.
Yes.
I feel like that's fair. An example of like something that I think was totally blown out of proportion was like people made a big deal the other day during the funeral/memorial service of George H.W. Bush, the president who died, the former president who died a couple of days ago. He didn't say the Apostles' Creed. And I know that like for us as atheists and as non-theists, that's something that could almost be celebrated because other presidents, including the Obamas, did, like other presidents and their families, including the Obamas, did recite the Apostles' Creed during the service. And that's a thing that you do if you're a Christian, I guess. Like there are plenty of Christians who don't because they're normal people. But like he didn't. He decided not to for whatever reason. I think he's like, honestly, I'm going to say something that's kind of controversial. He's probably not a Christian. And I don't think that that's a good or a bad thing. But as someone who wants to run for office one day, and as someone who maybe would have wanted to be the first atheist president, it annoys me that the person who could very well have actually been the first atheist president might be Donald Trump. And I'm not going to say he's an atheist, but I don't really think that he like believes in Christianity.
But didn't you hear? No one reads the Bible better than Donald Trump.
I don't know if that's a thing he said, but it probably is. That sounds
I think he did. I think he said something like that. He said he was talking about, he was comparing his book, The Art of the Deal, to the Bible.
Yeah. I do remember that he said something along the lines of like his favorite book was the Bible and his second favorite was The Art of the Deal. But honestly, knowing him, if someone like comments right now and is like, it's actually the reverse. It's like The Art of the Deal is his favorite book and then it's the Bible that's his second favorite. That would be equally in character for the president.
Neither would surprise me.
But yeah, those are like the main US things for right now. Lots of this is really silly stuff because right now there isn't a huge amount of stuff that's going on politically that is normal. Like there's no real discussion of legislation or anything because we're waiting. Like right now, Congress is not in session. Congress is going to be in session in a couple of weeks to inaugurate all the new people. So January and February's SofaCast vlogs on the United States are going to be like wild experiences. But right now, we're mostly just sort of reacting to like new politicians coming in, some scandals, some almost runoffs, things like certain progressive darlings losing elections, which really sucks. There were a lot of either progressive or Democrats who were almost progressive who fought really hard and came close to winning seats all over the country. And to see some of them lose honestly hurt a lot of people, myself included. Like there were a lot of races that were just really disappointing.
Yeah, I bet.
Well, it's always troubling if the candidate that you're passionately supporting doesn't win.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, in my area, it's been the same guy who's the MP for my area and has been since that seat came into existence, because it's mostly pensioners who live in my area. So they always vote in the same guy.
Okay. And And, mostly here in Leeds, most of the seats here in Leeds are pretty safe Labour seats. So if you vote for anyone other than Labour, it's pretty much a wasted vote.
Mm. Yeah, it's the same around here, but blue.
Oh, right. And where I'm from, the Garden of England is pretty much blue as well. But which brings us nicely, well, kind of nicely, to this side of the pond, and it's all about the Brexit shambles.
Oh dear.
So how's Brexit going?
Oh, it's going great.
How many ministers have resigned now from the cabinet because of the botched Brexit deal?
Most of them. I'll see if I can find the count. Hang on. How many resigned ministers Brexit? Brexit cabinet resignations.
Yes, I've got a list here. Sam Guillemard, Universities and Science Minister, resigned.
Yeah.
Riemann Kishti, I'm probably butchering his surname.
Yeah.
The Conservative Vice Chairman resigned. Ranil Jayawardena.
Yep.
I
think you're on the same page I'm on. They're in the same order.
Suella Braverman, Junior Brexit Secretary, she resigned.
Yeah.
Anne-Marie Trevelyan.
Yeah. Resigned, yeah.
Esther McVeigh, she's gone.
She's resigned. Oh, there goes poor old Raab.
Dominic Raab, yeah.
Oh, look at his face. Look at that lip. It's
Yes. Yeah. He resigned because of he didn't like the Brexit deal that he helped to negotiate.
Well, as I understood it, he was supposed to be the negotiator, but was basically just there taking notes for Theresa May.
Yes. And didn't he say that he was surprised? It's just how important the Dover-Calais crossing was to our trade.
Well, I'd be surprised about something like that, but I don't know a huge amount about the intricacies of trade with Europe. The guy negotiating Brexit really should.
Yes, you'd think so, wouldn't you?
His thing, though.
Yeah.
Whenever I end up discussing Brexit with someone, it's always way into the conversation before anyone asks where anyone else stands on it, because it's quite divisive. So people tend to just kind of tiptoe around where the person they're talking to stands on it and try to find something they both disagree with the government on, so they can go, I see, it's all their fault.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And Joe Johnson resigned as well, and he wrote a scathing letter in the Telegraph, I believe, about how bad this deal is, but I think Jacob Rees-Mogg submitted the first letter of no confidence in Theresa May on the 15th of November. He actually openly threatened to do so in the House of Commons as well, which was a bold move. What do you think's happening there?
Well, I think there is a move to get rid of Theresa May and try to install someone that there seemed to be a little group of people trying to get rid of Theresa May and essentially take over the Conservative Party.
Yeah.
A lot of people, well, I'm not going to say a lot of people actually, because I'm not in the Conservative Party. I don't know that, but at least several people who are members of the Conservative Party that I follow on Twitter have openly said they want Theresa May gone immediately.
Yeah. How long do you think how long do you think she can last?
Well, to be fair, she's already outlasted my predictions.
At least you're honest. I feel like it's really interesting watching UK politics from the American side because, like, one, it's really funny to like see Brexit and its aftermath because I know a lot of Americans who spoke out of their rear ends and said that Brexit was not going to happen. And I feel like it makes a certain kind of sense, or it made a certain kind of sense to assume that Brexit wasn't going to happen when you're looking at it like before the referendum. And now seeing the nightmare that Brexit has become, it still makes a certain kind of sense for someone to have looked back and been like, yeah, I said Brexit wasn't going to happen. I'm right and I'm wrong at the same time because it's going to happen, but no one really wants it to.
Let me make myself unpopular here again and say I voted to leave and thought the country wouldn't leave.
That's what I heard a lot of too, and I have friends in the UK who did something similar. I don't know your reason for doing it, but with them, when I asked them out of curiosity, they said that like they wanted to make what was in a sense a protest vote, and also that like they didn't really like the EU, but they knew, like they understood that it was probably best for the country to stay in the EU, but they wanted some things to change.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my reasoning if you like. I voted to leave because I oppose over-centralization of authority, and I'm somewhat opposed to globalism, not in terms of people working together and harmony and that kind of thing, but I'm opposed to everything becoming so far removed from local people that no one has any influence over how they're governed.
Yeah. I mean, I voted to leave for similar reasons because I genuinely believe that there is a democratic deficit within the EU, and it wasn't, but I never dreamt that we would actually leave the EU, and I never, nor did I dream that the Tories would make such a hash of it.
Here's what I think happened. I think the reason that the Brexit referendum happened when it did was, I think the idea was that it was predicted that the people would vote to remain, because at the time that the referendum was put forward, there was a lot of other uncertainty with Trump and other things in the world, and people. It was thought that people would go, "Yeah, we need to stick together with Europe." So that I think I might be putting on my tinfoil conspiracy hat here, but I think the idea was we'll do a Brexit referendum now while the prevailing opinion seems to be EU is good, so that we don't have to keep talking about it, and we can say, no, we already had the referendum, we voted, the vote was to stay.
Yeah.
So that when people kept bringing up, no, we want to leave the EU, they can go, yeah, well, we had a referendum on it and look what happened.
Yeah. And David Cameron, I think, to a certain extent, I think he wanted to appease his backbenchers. And he also wanted to gain votes from UKIP as well. But I don't think he really believed that people would vote to leave. And so he didn't have a Brexit strategy. So when people voted to leave, he literally said, I can't deal with this shit. Somebody else, some other poor bastard is going to have to deal with it. I'm out of here.
It just kind of went, oh shit, you voted to leave. Bye. Teresa's your problem.
And,
although I hear, last I heard about David Cameron, he's in charge of some kind of educational fund, which is making him rather a lot of money.
oh, I don't doubt it.
So he left being prime minister, but he's not out of the the aristocracy, as it were.
Oh no, of course not. But what do you think of Theresa's deal?
To be honest, I don't know. I have attempted to look through it, and everywhere I look for, I tried to look up things like, what does this deal mean? Tried to find out information on it. I found a lot of conflicting information, and I'm finding it a little bit difficult to decipher. My thought from the bits I am able to interpret is that it's, my gut reaction to the bits I can understand is it's remaining in the EU, but with none of the benefits.
Yeah.
In fairness, there's a possibility there's a possibility that the EU itself is going to be a serious obstacle here, especially because, like, we talked about this during the last SofaCast. The EU has a vested interest, especially right now, in making sure that no other countries want to leave. So it makes sense that the EU is going to be like a hardliner on this. I honestly don't know what it is that the EU itself and its leadership is thinking as they're like reacting to all the news, especially because, like, if you only look at like journalism, both American and some British journalism that talks about Theresa May right now, it looks like a lot of people are saying that if Theresa May fails in her Brexit deal negotiation, she's gonna either lose power or she's gonna be forced to step down. And that's probably the prevailing sentiment. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's what I'm getting from reading different articles.
Yes.
Well, you go.
Yeah. Another. What's the word I'm looking for? But something else that could foul things up for Theresa May is that the DUP do not like this deal one bit. They're not happy with it at all. So they're threatening to withdraw their, from the agreement that they have together, basically.
I was well, I thought it was a pretty stupid maneuver to call a snap election, and then it turned out to be a very stupid maneuver to call a snap election.
Yes.
But also, I am, the more I see of how the EU, the top people in the EU are reacting to public opinion and the negotiations and the things that I hear them say about the Brexit situation, the more I find myself disliking them, and the more I find myself being of the opinion that leaving with no deal is a good idea.
Yeah. And but I think we need to explain who the DUP are.
I'm aware of them, but for people later on, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea. Like people who watch this after it's finished streaming.
Yeah.
It's probably a good idea, yep.
So the DUP stands for the Democratic Loyalist Party, and they hold the most seats in the Northern Ireland Assembly. Critically, they hold 10 seats in the British Parliament. And why is this important? Because in the snap election that we've just been talking about, the Tory party, the Conservatives, they only got 317 seats.
Yeah, they lost a load of seats that they were expecting to keep, and they were expecting to get more.
Yeah, they needed 326 seats to form a majority government. So they need the help of the DUP to bring their total up to 327. They haven't entered into a coalition with the DUP. It's just an agreement that the DUP will vote their way when necessary, in exchange for how much was it? £1 billion to be spent in Northern Ireland.
Well, there's an issue there, which is the DUP are fundamentally opposed to certain things that the UK government, well, a lot of the UK government are for, because the DUP is a democratic unionist party. They are for an Irish union.
Yeah.
So,
so
trying to maintain the United Kingdom as including Northern Ireland is not really what they're about. Also, when I was doing some research for a brief talk I did I did a brief video at the time this happened. They're a little bit fundamentalist in their religious views, the old DUP.
Yes, they're against abortion. They're against same-sex marriage.
They're somewhat troubling.
Yes. And so you can understand why people were angry at this arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention the fact that they also have links with the Ulster Defence Association, who are a paramilitary group in Northern Ireland, and this who are still active. I think they murdered someone recently.
Yeah, well, the party was founded by Ian Paisley. It was.
That's right.
The Reverend and Right Honourable the Lord Bouncible PC Ian Paisley.
Yes.
So they're a little bit fundamentalist. They're a little bit opposed to Ireland being part of the UK. They're in general not what a United Kingdom government needs to be allying with.
I thought they were for Northern Ireland.
Let me. I'm just checking that as we speak to make sure I'm not talking out my ass.
It's Sinn Féin who wants out of the UK.
Yes, no, that's right. The DUP agreed to share power with the Sinn Féin. Now, I'm just reading that line as you said it.
And so, but with them losing confidence in Theresa May and threatening to withdraw from their side of the agreement, surely Theresa May's position is untenable.
I think it was untenable from the start, really. She's trying. She's trying as someone who wanted to remain in the EU to put Brexit through.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, she was she was a Remainer, wasn't she?
Mm. So she's trying to negotiate leaving the EU from the position of someone who wants to remain in the EU.
Yeah, which is why some people would prefer it if someone like Jacob Rees-Mogg was the prime minister and leading the Brexit negotiations.
I don't know where I stand on Mogg. I haven't heard very much. I haven't heard him say very much because I haven't bothered to to listen to his podcast or whatever it is he does. But because I've seen it advertised and then gone, I don't want to listen to him.
Right.
I think I don't know if he'd be an improvement policy-wise or in terms of his ability as a politician, but at least he'd say something.
Yes. And I think he's more right. He leans more to the right than Theresa May does.
Mm.
I think he's Catholic. So I think he's against abortion.
Interesting.
I can't remember any of his other views at the moment, but his voting record is worse than Theresa May's. I mean,
dear. Well, he sort of came into my sphere of knowledge during the Count Dankula fiasco.
Oh man,
because he kind of appeared as a supportive voice towards Count Dankula. And then the next thing I heard, there was Jacob Rees-Mogg signing a thing that would effectively restrict certain elements of freedom of speech. And I was going, oh, well, there goes that.
Yeah. Yes. So I think we need to, as well as Brexit, I think we need to talk about Jeremy Corbyn's Anorak.
Oh yes, absolutely. That has been a major bone of contention with some influential figures.
Yeah. Yes. Badger, do you want to fill people in on?
Absolutely. Right. Here's the situation. I'm assuming you're on about the memorial Anorak.
Yes.
Right. Here's the situation, everyone. Jeremy Corbyn, current leader of the Labour Party and the opposition government, turned up to the Memorial Remembrance Day ceremony wearing an anorak, which is a type of waterproof coat. People got very irate with him about looking a bit scruffy at this event.
Yeah.
Even the one, that's just his kind of look. He always looks a bit scruffy. Have you seen his face? Also, to be honest, I didn't think he looked any scruffier than any of the people around him. He was just wearing a slightly less prestigious looking coat. He just had one less lapel on his collar.
Yes. And the popper he was wearing was too small.
Oh, the poppy was too small. Yeah, of course.
But we're joking about this. But there is something.
We are. They weren't.
No, they weren't. But it's indicative of the criticism that is levied towards Corbyn on a daily basis.
I think the year before he didn't bow enough.
No, but the Sun even put a measurement on it. He said he should have.
Oh,
It was 4 centimeters. It wasn't. It was 4 cent. His head was 4 centimeters too high.
maybe he's got back problems. Maybe he didn't exactly precisely measure how deep his bow went.
And Tony Robinson was criticizing him just today. I'll read you his tweet.
Are we? Who are we on about now? Sorry.
Tony Robinson, Baldrick.
Oh, Baldrick. Sorry.
Let's see if
I wasn't sure if we were on about Baldrick or not for a second then.
All right. He said this: "What a tragic figure Corbyn makes, blandly ignoring difficult issues and spouting platitudes. He surrounds himself with racists and Marxist opportunists. His cabinet is callow and useless. He could have gone down in history as the man who saved this country from Brexit, but he won't." What do you make of that?
Well, there is a certain issue with the anti-Semitism that I have heard about to do with certain members of the Labour Party. I don't know about the veracity of that, because without external verification, I tend to take any shouting on the internet with a grain of salt.
Yeah. And the thing is, there's all anti-Semitism, unfortunately, has been a problem in the Labour Party since before Corbyn became the leader.
So I've heard, but I'm not sure I've actually seen any evidence of this myself.
Yeah. I think I do remember. I haven't got any. I haven't got any evidence for this to hand, but I think I do remember. Ed. I can't remember his surname. The former leader. Being criticised for not handling anti-Semitism properly.
Well, here's the issue there. Well, an issue there. In today's climate, it is extremely easy and common to just say, well, you couldn't possibly be in government, you're a racist. It's so common that it's, you can't talk about or be in politics without being called a racist.
Yeah. And but the reason I bring up Corbyn is because he is do we really believe that he can negotiate a better Brexit deal than Theresa May?
No.
And this is the thing, he's criticizing this. He's called it a botched deal, but I don't think I really don't believe he could do any better, to be honest.
What would
what would
a good Brexit deal look like to the two of you? What would it constitute if it were as close to ideal as possible, so to speak?
After you.
Well, I think a good Brexit deal would be a complete Brexit, which Theresa's deal isn't, because it would keep us under the rules of Brexit, the rules of the EU, for an indefinite amount of time. There, she's and like you said, Badger earlier, it would still be in the EU without the benefits of the EU. So a good deal, as far as I'm concerned, would be a deal that divorces us from the EU completely, so that we're completely free to make our own rules and what's the word I'm looking for?
Sovereignty.
Yeah. That's not the word I was looking for, but that will do.
Yeah, that's the one that keeps coming up in these discussions for me.
Yeah. And what do you think?
I'm gonna go very much along the same lines as you. Leaving the EU, leaving being under the thumb of the EU's regulations, and having sovereignty, control of borders, control of internal laws, control of fishing. But as well as that, I think certain aspects of trade and movement need to be thought about, because after being in the EU for so long, there are a lot of EU citizens living in the UK, and there are a lot of UK citizens living in the EU. And I think a good Brexit deal would need to take that and trade with the closest landmass to the UK into consideration. Be that in the form of if you're here already, you can stay, or there being an expedited method for people from the EU to move to the UK and vice versa. And in terms of trade, something where there is some kind of preferential treatment, if only because they're so close.
Yeah. But the reason I think Jeremy Corbyn is unlikely to get a better deal than Theresa May is because of what Luciano touched on before. The EU are not going to give up that easily. They want to make us an example. They want to make an example of us, so that no other countries will dare to leave the EU, and they'll give Corbyn just as bad a time of things as they've given Theresa May.
I think so.
And plus, the Blairites, the MPs who lean more towards the right, in the Labour Party, will grab any opportunity they can to undermine Corbyn.
Well, they want him gone.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who want Corbyn gone, just as there are a lot of people who want Theresa May gone. Neither big, major party has a popular leader among its members at the moment.
No. And so even if there was, they were able to force an election, and even if they won, we wouldn't be better off in terms of the Brexit negotiations. Would be back where we started.
Back where we started, but back a bit from where we started, because now there's a new negotiator who doesn't know any of the people involved.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So it's a mess.
I am leaning more and more to the opinion that leaving without a deal would be preferable, because then trade agreements and other things can be negotiated from even footing.
Yeah. But then we would probably end up with a hard border between ourselves and Northern Ireland.
Yes, that's not ideal.
And it could only, but so yeah, no matter, it's a mess. No matter how we look at things, I think it's just.
Well, the whole situation is a mess.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's just not. No one had a plan of what to do about it before before calling the referendum. Cameron didn't have a plan. No one in his government had a plan. No one opposing him had a plan either.
No, because I could know. Certainly Cameron. I thought, in his arrogance, he didn't, but he genuinely believed. I think that people would vote his way.
I think so. So now we have what do we call him? Is Boris, isn't it? We have Boris Johnson and Mogg coming up with a plan. A year after the plan was needed, too late to be put into the negotiation.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, I think we've covered just about everything on both sides of the pond, and we've been speaking now for just over an hour. Any final comments from either of you before we leave?
I'll go ahead and go first.
Yeah, you go first.
I was waiting just to make sure I didn't want to interrupt anyone. So right now, I feel like in both of our countries, to different extents, right now is sort of an awkward time to be focusing on politics. But I do know that, like, as the new year begins, especially in the United States, as the new year begins, things are going to get very interesting. I partially because I was under the impression that this was going to be starting an hour later. I wasn't at the top of my game today, but I am happy that I was able to cover a lot of the really important stuff. I think that this is going to be a fun podcast to continue to do. And I think that as politics continues to get a little bit crazier, and it will be, like politics, at the very least on the United States side, is going to get very interesting when the Democrats who won the House of Representatives back get inaugurated and actually have the power to do things aside from talking and Instagramming their inaugurations and all that. And I'm not saying that as like an attack on any politicians. I'm saying that because right now, a lot of what's going on is people talking and people being very loud and angry on both sides of the aisle, but not that many things at the very least in Congress that affect people are happening right now. So this is kind of a fun, almost dead time where if you're watching politics in the United States, you are largely watching what the president does and what the courts do, as opposed to what the Congress does.
Well, my additions would be, as we have mentioned, UK is a bit of a mess at the moment. The EU is a bit of a mess at the moment. It's a worrying time because there's no certainty in any area about what's going to happen next. It could go a number of different directions, and the most convincing predictions I've heard are not very encouraging.
No.
On a non-politics note, my latest video has just gone live about how the 2 Star Wars sequels could have been a lot better. So,
right.
So that's slightly more cheerful. If you want to hear me talk about some nerd stuff.
Brilliant. And I'll put links to both of your channels in the description, and the end cards and what have you. So, but thanks for joining us, Bad Tempered Badger.
Thank you for inviting me on.
And thanks as always, Luciano, for your valuable input and insight into US politics.
I'm glad that I could be here. It's going to be interesting to see how this podcast evolves and how the things we talk about begin to diversify, starting with next month's when Congress is not quite going to be in session, but we're going to be seeing people getting ready to be inaugurated and all of that, since during next month, assuming we're continuing the first Friday of every month, it's definitely going to be it's going to be a little bit like this, but I feel like there's going to be a lot more dramatic rhetoric than there is right now. And right now there's an impressive amount of dramatic rhetoric in the United States in terms of politics.
Yeah.
Well, someone said in the chat just now, as an American, it's completely surreal to hear people discussing politics in calm voices. That purple rhymes with orange.
Yes. Yeah, I expect so, yeah. And anyway, thanks to everyone who has tuned in. And we'll say goodbye for now and join us next month for the next installment of the Sofa Cast.
We'll see you then.